What if I told you some of the greatest inventions in history didn't fail because they were bad? They failed because the world wasn't ready. Timing matters. The right idea at the wrong moment can look ridiculous. Too expensive, too strange, too ambitious. And then years later, the exact same idea comes back and changes everything. In this video, we're breaking down the top 10 inventions that arrived too early for their time. These weren't flops. They were pioneers. Concepts so advanced that the technology, the infrastructure, or even society itself couldn't keep up. Some were ignored. Some were mocked. Some went bankrupt trying to drag the future into the present. And wait until you see number 4. It wasn't just ahead of its time. It predicted an entire industry decades before anyone else saw it coming. Let's rewind the clock and look at the ideas that were simply born too soon. 1. The General Magic Cap. In the early 1990s, a secretive team of engineers in Silicon Valley attempted to create a device that would redefine human communication. This group, known as General Magic, consisted of the same minds that helped build the original Macintosh. Their project focused on a handheld computer capable of sending emails, managing a calendar, and even executing online shopping. They called their software Magic Cap. It featured a graphical interface designed to look like a physical room where users interacted with objects like desks and filing cabinets. The hardware arrived on the market in 1994 in the form of the Sony Link and the Motorola Envoy. These devices possessed touchscreens and wireless capabilities decades before such features became standard. However, the world lacked the infrastructure to support them. The internet remained a niche tool for academics and hobbyists. Cellular data networks were slow and unreliable. Most consumers used landline telephones and had no concept of mobile data. The high price and the lack of a functional network meant the devices could not perform their core duties. General Magic eventually declared bankruptcy. Today, the concepts they pioneered exist in every smartphone on Earth. The team moved on to lead projects at Google and Apple, proving their vision was correct even though their timing was off. 2. The Nintendo Virtual Boy. In 1995, the video game industry witnessed a bold attempt to bring three-dimensional immersion to the home. Nintendo released the Virtual Boy, a tabletop console that players used by pressing their faces against a set of goggles. It used a unique system of vibrating mirrors and red LEDs to create a sense of depth in every game. This was the first major attempt by a consumer electronics company to market a virtual reality headset to a mass audience. The technical limitations of 1995 made the experience difficult for the average user. The screens produced only red and black images because full-color LED technology was too expensive for a toy. This specific color palette caused intense eye strain. The hardware also lacked the sensors required to track head movement. If a player turned their head, the image remained stationary, which led to motion sickness. The marketing promised a digital world, but the hardware delivered a painful experience. Nintendo sold fewer than 1 million units and discontinued the product within months. It took another 20 years for screen resolution and motion tracking to reach a level where virtual reality became a viable form of entertainment. 3. The Seymour Cray Supercomputer, the Cray-1. During the mid-1970s, a man named Seymour Cray built a machine that outpaced the computing world by decades. The Cray-1 supercomputer featured a radical C-shape designed to minimize the length of internal wires. This design allowed electrical signals to travel at the highest possible speeds. It used a complex cooling system involving freon gas to manage the immense heat generated by its processors. At the time of its release, it was the fastest computer in existence, capable of 160 million operations per second. The machine arrived before the software industry knew how to use such power. Most companies and research labs utilized computers for basic data entry or simple calculations. Only government agencies like the NSA or weather research centers had the complex mathematical problems required to justify a $9 million purchase. The Cray-1 sat in a category of its own, waiting for the rest of the world to develop the algorithms and software models that could utilize its speed. 4. The AT&T Picturephone. The desire for video communication dates back much further than most people realize. AT&T showcased the Picturephone at the 1964 World's Fair. It allowed two people to see each other on small screens during a telephone call. The company believed this technology would replace standard voice calls within a decade. They invested hundreds of millions of dollars into building a network that could handle both audio and video signals simultaneously. The project faced insurmountable economic and technical hurdles. In 1970, a monthly subscription for the service cost nearly $160. This amount would exceed $1,000 in current currency. The existing copper telephone lines struggled to carry the massive amount of data required for a video feed. The image quality remained low and the frame rate was jittery. Most importantly, consumers felt uncomfortable with the lack of privacy. They preferred the ability to talk without being seen. AT&T eventually abandoned the project after realizing the public was not ready for the intrusion of a camera in their living rooms. It took the invention of high-speed fiber optics and digital compression for video calling to become a daily reality. 5. The Xerox Alto. In 1973, the Xerox PARC Research Center developed a computer that would define the modern work environment. The Xerox Alto was the first machine to feature a mouse, a graphical user interface, and bitmapped displays. It used icons and windows to represent files and folders, a concept that felt revolutionary in an era of text-only command lines. The Alto even featured local area networking and the ability to send electronic mail between offices. Xerox management failed to understand the value of their creation. They viewed the company as a provider of paper and copiers. They saw the Alto as a niche research project rather than a commercial product. They manufactured a limited number of units but never attempted to sell them to the general public. They believed the mouse was a confusing toy and that the graphical screen was too expensive to produce at scale. When Steve Jobs visited the facility in 1979, he recognized that Xerox had created the future. He took those ideas and implemented them in the Macintosh. Xerox had the technology to own the entire personal computer market, but chose to focus on their existing business instead. Now, before we jump into the next incredible invention, real quick, if you're into these kinds of stories, the ideas that were so ahead of their time they confused everyone, make sure you join the missing clue. Hit subscribe, drop a like on the video, it genuinely helps the channel grow. And it lets me keep diving into the overlooked technology that quietly shaped the world we live in today. Alright, let's get into the next one. 6. The EV1 electric car by General Motors. In 1996, General Motors launched the EV1, the first mass-produced electric vehicle from a major automotive manufacturer. It was a two-seater car designed specifically for high efficiency. It featured an aerodynamic shape and a quiet electric motor that provided instant torque. GM offered the car through a lease program in California and Arizona to test the feasibility of electric travel. Many drivers praised the car for its performance and its lack of carbon emissions. The infrastructure required to support electric cars did not exist in the 1990s. Charging stations were rare, and the lead-acid batteries provided a range of only 70 to 80 miles. GM executives grew skeptical of the long-term profitability of the vehicle. They believed that consumers would always prefer the range and convenience of gasoline engines. They eventually canceled the program and recalled every vehicle. Most of the cars were taken to a desert scrapyard and crushed. This decision occurred just before advances in lithium-ion technology made longer ranges possible. GM had a significant head start in the electric race, but decided to abandon the field before the market matured. 7. The Web Surfer by WebTV. In 1996, a company called WebTV attempted to merge the television with the internet. They sold a small box that allowed users to browse the web using their existing TV screen and a remote control. The goal was to reach millions of households that did not own a home computer. It aimed to make the internet a communal family experience in the living room. The execution of the idea suffered from the limitations of the hardware. Televisions in the mid-1990s had very low resolution compared to computer monitors. Text appeared blurry and difficult to read. The dial-up connection meant that images took a long time to load. Most websites were not formatted for a television screen, making the browsing experience clumsy and inefficient. Users realized that they preferred a dedicated computer for web tasks and a television for entertainment. The concept of the smart TV would have to wait until high-definition screens and high-speed wireless networks became standard in every home. 8. The Sega Dreamcast. The Sega Dreamcast arrived in 1998 with features that set it apart from every other gaming console. It was the first machine to include a built-in 56K modem for online play. It featured high-definition output and a unique memory card with its own screen. Sega wanted to create a gaming ecosystem where players could compete against each other over the internet. It was a forward-thinking machine that anticipated the rise of online multiplayer gaming. The Dreamcast faced intense competition from the Sony PlayStation 2, which arrived shortly after. The PlayStation 2 included a DVD player, which made it a more valuable piece of hardware for families. Sega also struggled with software piracy because the Dreamcast could run copied games without any hardware modifications. This led to a loss of revenue for game developers. The world was still transitioning to broadband internet, meaning the Dreamcast's online features were often too slow for smooth gameplay. Sega eventually ran out of funds and stopped manufacturing hardware entirely. 9. The Automat Restaurant. The Automat was a vision of a fully automated dining experience that flourished in the early 20th century. Customers entered a large hall filled with chrome and glass compartments. They inserted coins, turned a handle, and pulled a fresh meal out of a small window. There were no waiters or cashiers visible. It offered high-quality food with the speed of a vending machine. For decades, it was a staple of urban life in cities like New York and Philadelphia. The rise of the suburban lifestyle and the drive-through restaurant led to the decline of the Automat. As more people began to use cars for daily travel, they preferred restaurants where they could remain in their vehicles. The labor costs of maintaining the complex machinery inside the Automat also became a burden. The original model was based on a pedestrian culture that was disappearing. Today, the concept has returned in the form of robotic kiosks and touchscreen ordering systems. The Automat was a successful idea that simply existed during a massive shift in how people lived and traveled. 10. The Sony Libriè e-reader. In 2004, exactly 3 years before the Amazon Kindle reached the market, Sony released the Libriè EBR-1000EP in Japan. It was the first device to use e-ink technology, which allowed the screen to look like physical paper. It was lightweight, easy on the eyes, and capable of holding hundreds of books. It represented the first real threat to the traditional publishing industry. Sony implemented a very restrictive business model that angered users. You could not own the books you purchased. You could only rent them for 60 days. After 2 months, the files would expire and disappear from the device. The bookstore was also limited to a small number of titles in the Japanese language. Sony focused too much on protecting their copyrights and not enough on the user experience. When Amazon released the Kindle, they allowed users to keep their books forever and offered a massive catalog. Sony had the better hardware first, but they failed to understand the needs of the modern reader. Innovation depends on more than just a smart idea. A machine requires a supporting cast to function. The General Magic team understood handheld computers in 1994, but they could not build the cell towers needed to make them useful. They had the brain, but the world lacked the nervous system. Progress in one industry often relies on breakthroughs in another. The electric car needed the laptop industry to perfect lithium batteries before it became a reality. Even the best hardware fails if the software or the culture is not ready. These inventions show that timing is the most critical part of any toolkit. What tech today is currently waiting for the world to catch up? Comment below and subscribe for more.